So an excellent good morning to all of you. And indeed, you are quite numerous on this beautiful morning here in Paris. And I hope in all the different places you are connecting from. So we take these high numbers as quite a sign of the importance of this actual topic and also the timeliness of this online event. My name is Nick Thijs. I'm a senior policy advisor in Sigma, and it will be my honor, pleasure, and also duty to guide us and you through today's event. An event that you have all seen from the agenda, which promises to be very interesting, very rich. And we have foreseen 3 keynotes and 2 panels. Panels with high-level and esteemed colleagues and representatives from the 6 economies in the region. But before diving into all of this, I would kindly like to pass the floor to the head of Sigma, Dr. Gregor Virant, and Florian Hauser, the team lead in the horizontal unit on BAR in DG NEAR, the European Commission, for their kind welcome and intro words. So please, Gregor, with any further ado, you have the floor, you have the screen.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. Good morning, dear Deputy Prime Minister, dear State Secretary, dear colleagues from the Western Balkans public administrations, from the European Commissions, and everybody else. As you all know, or at least some of you, Sigma was extremely busy last year. On top of much other work, we went about regular monitoring of the state of play in public administrations of the Western Balkans against the principles of public administration. It was a strenuous work, as always, of collecting data and evidence to assess public administrations against around 50 principles, 300 sub-principles, and 1,000 criteria in 6 areas of PAR. This time we did it fully online, as missions back then were still not possible for obvious reasons. But I have to say it worked out really well, perfectly. So we came out with the 6 country reports at the beginning of December 21. And then we made presentations country by country, in some cases already on the spot, because at that time it was already possible. And in other cases, we did it online. But this time we were not satisfied with this bilateral type of presenting the reports and producing the reports. For the first time in history of Sigma, we decided to combine the 6 reports in a regional overview, area by area: civil service and HRM, accountability, PFM, service delivery, and so on. And this resulted in a very nice presentation and a very good discussion at the Ministerial conference that was held on the 22nd of February this year. You can still find all the materials, including the recording of the conference, the presentation, and the regional overview paper on our website. At that conference, we also launched our new data portal, of which we are very proud. So you can now, if you wish, delve into the ocean of data and evidence if you need it for your work, or just if you have some spare time and you need some nerdy distraction. But we were still not satisfied. So we decided to organize a couple of follow-up webinars to leverage and better present all the monitoring work. And today's webinar on digital government is one of the events in this context. We decided to do it in a slightly different way, namely not to focus just on one of the 6 areas like service delivery or civil service and HRM, but to take a cross-cutting view of everything that is digital, because digital really cuts across all areas of public administration reform, and we have so much data on digital in all areas you will see. But let me also say a word or two about our future plans in this respect. Many of you have already heard that we are currently working on the new version, on the revision of the principles of public administration. Of course, we are doing it in close cooperation with the with the European Commission, with Florian and other colleagues, because we thought together with the Commission that after 8 years it was high time for a revision, for an update. We want to update the principles with the most recent developments in the EU, in the OECD, and globally in general. We want to make them even more relevant, to simplify them, to make them easier to understand, less prescriptive, and more values oriented. We believe that they might serve also as a starting point for the important work of the Commission to develop a kind of assessment framework also for the member states. Because, you know, in this area, somehow enlargement and neighborhood was also a step ahead of the policies towards the member states. It's not enough to look after good governance only until you achieve EU membership. It is important for the whole European family that the member states also comply with the high standards of good governance, even 5 or 10 or 15 years after accession. So in this new framework we are now working on, we have devised, I have to say we are only at the stage of drafts for the time being, you know, it's a work in progress. So we have formulated a horizontal cross-cutting principle on digital government, where we would like to do two things. We would like to look into all the horizontal aspects of digital, particularly the enablers such as registries, interoperability, digital identity, etc. And B, we would like then to pull together digital results from all the areas. There is a digital aspect in each of the PAR areas, not even remotely only in service delivery, far from that. In policy making, for example, you have the integrated IT systems supporting government decision making, public consultations, government sessions, access to consolidated laws, texts of legislation, and so on. In civil service and HRM, you have the complex HRM information systems. In openness and transparency, you have the whole universe of open data. Not to mention service delivery, which of course is the most obvious aspect and the first thing that everyone thinks of when it comes to digital. But again, I would like to emphasize it's not the only area of digital. And then you have the digital aspects of PFM, like digital procurement, digital budgeting, financial management systems, etc., etc. Now, if there's one message we always want to deliver, although it might now already sound as a platitude, but we still see so many mistakes and inefficient practices that we simply need to reiterate it. I mean, well-developed enablers and sound processes are way more important than sexy applications. In other terms, nice user-friendly applications are only possible if you have accurate key registries in place, if they are interoperable, if you have a friendly solution for digital ID, if you strictly apply once only principle, if your processes are streamlined, free of unnecessary bureaucratic burden, and so on. And recent examples from the region have shown us how improvement in this sense, like for example, putting your civil status registries in order, can engender fantastic harvest, measured in millions of hours of time savings for citizens and businesses. On the other hand, we have also witnessed failed attempts to apply freshly developed and very expensive IT solutions when the substantive and procedural issues were not sorted out beforehand. It can really lead to disaster. You will see today that remarkable progress has been achieved since our last measurement in 2017, but also that there is still a lot of work, still a lot to be done in this respect in the Western Balkans. In Sigma, we have stepped up our engagement in service delivery and digital government in recent times. A big thank for this goes to Nick, and we are planning to continue doing so. Nick and Jose, who has joined us very recently, are in the lead, but as per our established practice, they liaise with the best experts and practitioners all around the EU, starting with the usual suspects, Estonians, High Sim. There's one last thing I would like to mention. That's the 2022 Western Balkans Public Administration Award Contest, which we are organizing together with RESPA, or RESPA is organizing together with us. Better to say, it has been launched a couple of days ago, and the deadline for applications is 15th of June, and you are all cordially invited to apply, to compete, and to win. And I will now really stop trespassing on your valuable time, and will just wish you to enjoy the webinar as much as possible. And with that, I pass it over to my dear friend, Florian Hauser, with whom we collaborate very closely. Of course, as you know, Florian is the team leader on public administration reform in DG NEAR. So over to you, Florian.
Thank you so much, Gregor. Thank you, Nick, and a big welcome to all honorary guests and participants in this. I just want to say, you know, this topic is so huge. I actually stepped out of another meeting that I'm chairing in parallel. You know, we have an annual enlargement package, so where we do a report on the state of the countries, and we have sort of a big consultation with many stakeholders. And basically, everybody talks only about digitalization, and it's not just a topic for the Western Balkans. You know, before taking this job, I was working for a new service in the European Commission called the Directorate General for Reforms, and there EU member states can ask the European Commission for help in improving their administration. And we see from the demand of the member states to get help with digitalization, this is the hottest topic. There's a huge demand. And as you already said, Gregor, there are many ways to get it wrong, and it's not easy to get it right. Yeah, and we always like to look at inspiring examples. I see you have colleagues from Estonia. I went to Estonia to learn about the system, and I totally love it. And you know, but it's not so easy to transfer the good practice in another context. You know, I'm from Germany, and when the former Chancellor Angela Merkel went to Estonia, she was so impressed, and she said, well, we should have a system, we should be like Estonia on digitalization. But I tell you, Germany can't pull it off, you know, because the context is very different. And what I learned from this is the technology is not the problem. And I think the first mistake we make is we look at, oh, here's a fancy technology, we will just use that. And we really risk that we digitize the bureaucracy, you know. And as you said, we need to look at all the fundamentals, the way the state is organized. Otherwise, we digitize the inefficiencies. You know, we need to streamline processes. We need to change the culture of working together, of integrating and breaking the silos between different sectors in order to maximize the benefit we can get out of digitalization. So I think the technology comes in the end, and I trust that the expert colleagues would confirm that. Looking at my own country, where we don't even have decent internet, I think there's a real opportunity also for the partners in the Western Balkans to leapfrog. You know, I think in many ways you're already better than some countries in the EU, and I think this is a really nice area where you can show off your good work. So yes, it's really, it requires a new mindset. It's rethinking the state, but also the role of the state. And maybe last but not least, we should also be aware of the risks. You know, we hear a lot about issues of cybersecurity, and I think we are just waking up to how critical this is. So, because when you digitalize, and not only your services but also your critical infrastructure, and if it's a victim to cyber attacks, that's really critical. I remember I was talking to the colleagues in Estonia, and they said I think they fend off more than 200 cyber attacks every day. and probably the Estonian colleagues would elaborate more on this. So security is important, but also transparency is also important. So with that in mind, I wish you a successful seminar. To be honest, I need to go back to my other meeting, but I have especially asked to record this because I will immediately watch it, because I think it's the most exciting topic, and I would rather be here than in the other meeting, but you don't need me. So enjoy this good workshop, and I'm very excited to follow it a little later. All the best. Thank you.
And thank you indeed so much, Florian, for putting this topic in the larger, and I would say the right scope and picture. And yes, we need you. Maybe indeed not exactly for today, but we need your personal and constant institutional support for us as Sigma, clearly, but also for all the colleagues, the friends in the region. So we definitely count on you to continue this excellent collaboration. Thanks for now, Florian, for making time in your super busy agenda to welcome the panelists, the speakers, and the wider audience. So thanks so much. Also, thanks, Gregor, for introducing the whole topic in such a nice way, and indeed putting the attention to, I think, the laborious work that as Sigma in a whole, together with the countries we have pulled together under the umbrella of the assessment. And this leads me to introduce to my good colleague and friend, Jose Manuel, as Gregor said, who joined quite recently in the Sigma team, but very happy to that. And Jose will present at a glance, the results, insights, some lessons learned on the state of play on digital government as we have seen coming through our Sigma monitoring reports. So with this, Jose, over to you, and you can take it away.
Thank you, Nick, for your nice presentation, and thank you, Gregor and Goran, for introducing the topic. If you allow me, I'm gonna share my screen. To start the presentation. As Gregor mentioned, in 2021, we Sigma conducted monitoring reports against the principle of public administration for Western Balkan economies. And Gregor explained very well that digital embeds all topical areas. It's not only in service delivery in our area, but it's also in PAR, in policy development and coordination, in human resource management. So for this seminar, what we did is we were collecting all the evidence found in the different topical areas to be able to present at a glance really quickly, because we don't want to take a lot of time from the good practices that are going to be presented later of our reports. So the first question we ask is digital helping openness of the government decision-making process? And the result is mixed. We see that in some economies, the records of the government decisions are published online. But for example, we see that there is not a clear practice of publishing online the agenda of the government meetings before they are done. So still citizens cannot easily access what is the government going to talk about next week in their meeting. So going also about transparency, what we found is the proactivity in disclosing information also shows some room for improvement. Some databases like the state budget are available in most Western Balkan economies, but some other useful information in order to enhance transparency, for example, the salaries of individual senior civil servants, they are still not proactively published in the region. The same is true about work for improvement when we move into human resources information system. What we find is database for human resource management are still lacking complete and updated information. So it is still a room for improvement to manage a better human resources policy in our public administrations. But of course, we found also good news. And sorry for starting with the room for improvement. For example, when we moved to e-procurement, we found that in all analyzed Western Balkan economies, all notices are published online and tender documentation can be downloaded. And not only that, but the penetration rates are also quite high in most Western Balkan economies. And here I have to make a precision, like you find Bosnia and Herzegovina in some slides, but not in others, because last year we conducted analysis, the monitoring report for Bosnia and Herzegovina in some areas, but in some other areas like service delivery, we're conducting that right now. And our colleagues from Bosnia are suffering our constant interviews and emails, Nick's and mine, and some other colleagues too. So that's why you will not find it in all slides. So moving to digital services for citizens and business, we also have good news here. Service delivery was the area in 2021 reports with the highest increase in the region. And this is not by chance. This was a result of advances in digital services. If we first analyze enablers, like Gregor and Florian put up very well at the beginning, that enablers is the most important if you want to build a success in digital government, we found like digital policy is now present in all analyzed Western Balkan economies. And this is actually a pretty big success, because if you look at the green tick surrounded by a circle, what this means is like this was not present in 2017, but is present now. So we have 3 economies which now they have a clear digital government policy with objectives and actions defined. And this was not the case only 4 years ago. The same is true with the central coordination. But of course, there is some room for improvement. Still, some economies are lacking performance metrics in digital uptake, so still they cannot track how many citizens, how many businesses are using digital services. With e-signature, also we found that now it's recognizing all legislations, and in some economies it also complies, and this is also an advancement, it also complies with the European regulations. And also we found a really interesting advance that is now in some economies the free option is available. And this is very important because citizens are reluctant to pay for e-signatures because they are used to private providers giving them options for free to perform their procedures digitally. And some of them we have found that in surveys all across Europe, citizens hesitate to pay for digital government. They think if they pay taxes, they shouldn't pay more to be able to perform online procedures. And with interoperability, we also find that countries are making a great effort in the area, in the region. But of course, there is still some room because this is a huge task. As said by Gregor and Florian, digitalize all registers, make them semantically compatible and technologically compatible is hard, but this is the only way to have successful digital services for all. If we now get into detail about what we found in our Sigma reports about services for companies, for businesses, we found really good results, and these are good news. Starting the business is now digital in all the region, which actually makes people lives easier in order to start a company, to invest, and this will lead into faster economic growth, of course, for sure. And also services, mainly taxes for companies, either the income corporate tax or the VAT, they also have really high take-up ratios of digital services. But when we move to citizens, we think this is not the same picture. If we talk about the personal income tax, the results are pretty good. But when we move to more traditional services like renewing the ID or buying and registering a second-hand vehicle, we find that still there is a lot of room for improvement. So these graphs is a visual of all our indicators regarding digital in service delivery. And here you can see what I have just pointed out. If you look at the policy dimension, there's big improvement from 2017 to 2021. And now all our scores are 80% of the maximum. In business, also, they are around 80%, which means Western Balkan economies are doing pretty well in digitizing services, in providing digital, smooth services for business. But for citizens, this is not still the case. Of course, there are some good news, there are some good stories that will be presented today, but as a general picture, still there is some room for improvement. And this is showing in the Balkan Barometer satisfaction of citizens. What we see is the region as a whole, citizen satisfaction is stagnated. And we could say we're improving in the region. We're making service digital. So why citizens are not paying off in the service? So this is because citizens are becoming also more demanding. Citizens have greater expectations. Citizens are used to an IT sector with changes. In 2017, maybe it was enough to be able to book an appointment through the internet with a public office. But now citizens don't want just the appointment. Now citizens want the appointment and they want to perform the task and they want to do it, if possible, with the mobile phone, not even with the computer. So there's still work to do. And there's still room for improvement in the Western Balkans to catch up with the European Union, as also was the conclusion of the e-government benchmark 2020. So just to sum up and not to take more of your time, we can see definitely good news. Digitalization, digital government is high in all the agenda in the Western Balkans. You are working well in enablers in all economies. E-services are increasingly available, and also the backend processes are getting digitized and are improving. But still, we find room for improvement in transparency, in proactively disclosing information, also in some backend processes. And for some e-services, the take-up ratio is still low. And if you let me send you this last final message, remember, we always, Nick and I, we always want you to remind you two things. E-tools are tools for achieving policy goals. So before engaging in any digital investment, and as Gregor and Florian says, what we need to know is what we want to achieve. We want to achieve greater quality, greater transparency, reduce administrative burden, and then we have to redesign the service and to decide the best IT solution to achieve our goal. But IT is not a means in itself. Digitalization is a fantastic tool, but it has to be put to work for something. And of course, mind the digital gap, as we like to say. If you allow me, I was talking the other day with an old man, and he told me, you know, I feel like my grandfather. My grandfather was not able to read, and he had to pay for everything. To get a birth certificate, he had to pay a man to read it for him, and now I feel the same. I use my nephews, but I feel that sometimes I need to pay someone because I don't know how to use the internet. So we cannot forget that. We are public sector. We should serve all citizens. We need to mind the digital gap and always provide options for people who are digitally excluded. So thanks for your time. And I pass the floor to Nick again.
Thank you so much, Jose, for presenting our findings, conclusions from, as was said by Gregor, really a huge work, presenting this in, if I may say, such a concise and clear manner. I think it will really serve the purpose and the discussions further on in today's event, but also hopefully also afterwards. And allow me just to come back to what Gregor said before, that we of course have all this information in the written reports, the monitoring reports that are fully available online for all the countries, for all the areas, but also that we have this wonderful data portal where you can explore yourself, where you can extract all this data, all this info from yourself, compare it with the past, compare it with others, really to use it for your best purposes and needs. So thanks once more, Jose, for giving us this insight. And I think really to lay out the foundations quite nicely on which we can build in the panels later on for the colleagues from the region and the moderators also to pick up on some of these findings and conclusions. Allow me, just before introducing our next speaker, to also address the audience online that if you have questions, remarks, comments, anything to make at this stage, please use the chat function. Drop your comments, your questions in the chat. We as speakers, panel members, and myself as moderator can see this. We can pick these up if we have the time during the actual webinar. And we promise and commit ourselves to also answer after the webinar to the questions and the comments that come in the chat. So please, colleagues, participants online, use this function to serve also the interaction during today and later on. With this, and perfectly on time, I would like to move to our next speaker, and it's really a pleasure to introduce Sim Sikut to you. I would say, well, does Sim need an introduction? Because I'm quite aware that most colleagues are familiar with Sim, with his work, and with the excellent work that he has done over the past years as the CIO in Estonia. Many of you, for sure, also have heard Sim in other meetings, events. So we are quite thrilled to have Sim today with us to give some of his insights, some of his lessons learned into this whole digital government, if I may say, transformation. The way that Estonia has taken, but for sure also putting it into a wider perspective, what it could potentially mean for other countries, including the Western Balkans. Nowadays, Sim is no longer the CIO of Estonia. He's now working or being a management partner in Digital Nation, but still advising the Estonian government, as many other governments all over the world, with his knowledge and insights. So please, with this, Sim, all over to you, and feel free to share your screen and to talk us through the slides. Thank you, Sim.
Thank you, Nick, and hello everyone. So I hope you hear me well still. Well, thank you for the kindness of introductions, and really lovely to be here. Exactly, many friends online here and some new friends as well. It's always humbling to speak about Estonia's experience a bit because it's 25 years of work in 15 minutes. So clearly we'll run over some things, but I also, in a friendly way, I think immediately would like to argue with Florian a bit, saying that I think what Estonia's experience has shown, and indeed today I will speak not just from Estonia, but really what to me seem to be some of the good practices from around the world. There are principles and practices that you can take over if your government is different. We've done it in Estonia. We stole happily and copied others happily whenever we could, because that was a way to accelerate things on our end. And yes, I mean, taking a complete solution, or the way a service is run and the digital system is hard, but the practices behind is a different story, and I think that's why we're all here. No, but look, Nick encouraged you to ask questions. I want to do the same. So before I share my screen, just exactly any questions you have, please pop them up, and we'll try to get some of them at least sort of already in the discussion here. Now, so let me see, just sharing the screen really brief. So Estonia's point of view, as I said, I mean, we've been on this path for a long time now. So basically, for us, it's really about being a journey. I want to start with this even before the slides. It's been a journey in a sense that it's been a way to really move from one step to another step. It's been really, let's say, how to say in China even, a way to cross the river by feeling for the stones. We've learned our lessons. It's been a bit of back and forth. It's never been like one steady progression only. But the more I think, sort of, let's say, when we speak from experience and my own as well as government CIO for 5 years, it really was a way that we experimented with things. We saw how things work, and from that we tried to make things better of sorts. I seem to have a very slight technical problem. I'm really sorry for this, and so give me just 20 seconds. I need to, I think, briefly pop in and out, and then I think the screen will pop up for some weird settings reason. So I'm really sorry, 15 seconds, back with you, and then immediately going. So just a sec.
No worries at all, Sim. We will sing and dance in the meantime, and just already picking up on Sim's intro, on which for sure we will come back later on this very important aspect of, well, stealing with pride, but also copying with sense. So don't be too proud and too pride to need to reinvent the wheel and the hot water yourself, but indeed look at what others have been doing. And that was also one of the reasons why we scheduled Sim, but also copy with sense and not to just blindly take over, because of course everyone and every country is special in itself. And I see we have Sim back online, so back over to you, Sim.
Absolutely, and so exactly, I hope you see the screen and you hear me well again. So, perfect. Sorry for the small interruption. So it's been a journey. We started way back, and I think some of you have heard me say this, we started way back because we are as small as we are. So we need all different things we could do in terms of reform and technology we could uptake to really pull off the chance of being a government in the first place. So with 1.3 million people, you only have so many riches and so much talent to go around, so you really have to be effective in how you do things. If we jump forward to today, and I just, just make sure we're on the same page, I would lay a bit of the common background for us. Today in Estonia, literally almost everything is digitally available as a service, at least as sort of transactional service. So by this point, after COVID now, we even managed to get a few other last things done. So the only remaining ones are marrying and divorce. You still have to show up for that. Anything else you can think about as a citizen in your life, there's a digital way of doing it. You could be anywhere in your region. You could be, as I am in Frankfurt Airport now, and still get everything done with the government as it is. As an entrepreneur, it's even the same thing. So with entrepreneurs, by the way, not only can you do things online, but you have to do them. So once you set up a company, it's mandatory to do all the rest digitally. All the reports, accountings, all the red tape, as they say, like that. We've even reached the point with the companies, as some of you know, that because of the easy services were available, we offer them out to the wide world. So it's not just about making things easier for the existing entrepreneur anymore, but it's also about that these services now attract more entrepreneurs to join us virtually in Estonia. So that's the e-residency program of ours, basically based on building good government and public services, making it digitally available. We now can grow as an economy more, and we can attract people to join us. We can basically have a growth revenue, not anymore just making things efficient only, but we also can add growth and bring more even government taxes in, for example. So my point being that it even matters that for entrepreneurs, it's been a really big boost for the business environment to make stuff digitally happen and possible. Same way, we've gone into beyond just transactional services into trying to change the core public services as they are. So things like, health is, or education and etc. Mind you, we still have lots to do. We are nowhere near ready, or Estonia is nowhere near ready. But the fact that there is a national medical digital health record, digital prescriptions, now there's also being worked on to really tie genomic information and sequencing into a preventive medicine program. This all means that the healthcare can be more effective, not just efficient, but effective in terms of really treating people better. So we've seen basically benefits of digital in all these different ways. And last but not least, in Estonia, we not just looked at efficiency at the end of the day alone, we also exactly looked into ways to really engage people and involve them, all the way to making it possible to vote online. So it's basically about using digital, not just for the things that people have to do, but also that people want to do, like vote and be part of democracy. So since 2005, yes, it's been possible to vote online for parliament, for municipality, so on, and about half of people do it this way. And this picture is no accident. I mean, why we did it? To make it more convenient, to make it more accessible. It can be a really bad weather in Estonia on a voting day, beginning of March. So it's a barrier to go out and cast your vote, or you travel, or you're stuck in office or whatever. So my point being that accessibility has been another benefit we've seen in action. So these are the few glimpses I wanted to offer, in a sense that we've seen the really hard evidence of how digital makes stuff better. And what we think now, I'll perhaps get to a few points, what we think we have learned along the way, first from Estonian experience and then a bit more widely. Estonian journey was really made possible and in a sort of very sort of, let's say, speedy way because of building the government on platforms from early stages. People call them different things, infrastructure, building blocks, doesn't matter. Modern word is platforms, but basically reusable common components that then all the rest of digital services are built on. So things like already has been mentioned today, identity, signatures, I mean, things that all different services will need. Providing them in a platform way, meaning like a shared or reusable component or a service, means that others don't have to reinvent this wheel. That accelerated in Estonia, for example, the adoption of digital across all different departments. So when we moved to digital ID early on, why did we move there? We moved for a specific reason. We didn't have enough money to build this up in duplicate ways. So we didn't have enough money to do authentication in each different service again and again. We had to optimize. And in the process, we found, hey, it brings other benefits. More security, because again, exactly risk had to be managed. We also found out that exactly it really enabled the agencies to focus on changing their core service as opposed to figuring out how to trust the people that are coming as users. That was a problem that was best solved in a common way. Another example that several of you know is data exchange. Many services, if you want to have them seamless and proactive and integrated, then you have to exchange data, pull some data, push some data. So a common way of doing it, which in Estonia meant from early days on X-Road, really helped to get that going. It allowed us to push really for designing easy services. And X-Road now, for the same reason, is being used in 20 countries around the world almost, including some in the region playing here. So my point being that platforms really accelerate things, and if in a way, if you can build them out, it just takes you ahead much faster like that. Another enabler, another accelerator, what we really found is law. Often people talk in a context of digital transformation about law as we have to reduce the barriers. So if a law says that something has to be on paper, that's a barrier, of course. So you have to get rid of that and take that away in a way. But we have also thought about law. How can we use the rules to push us to the next level of sorts? Not just remove the barrier, but really give us a kick in the butt and take things to the next stage again. So an example I would have here is digital signatures. I think all of you probably by now exactly have laws about accepting digital signatures, right? So for us, having a simple law early on with just 3 clauses in the law, very short, that said, if a document is signed digitally with a proper digital ID, it has to be accepted by the government. That's meant that the government now could not say no if digital documents came their way. So we had to digitize the process. We're talking about 2000 or 2001 here. Or another example that we brought in the rule of once only, which means that if some part of government knows some data about you, others should not ask again. So that forced governments to redesign services on the front end, make them integrated, and also start exchanging data with X-Road very widely in the back end. So these are examples of how we can use the rules to really take us to the next level. There are countries who do digital by default rules. There are countries who do different things along this line, open by default. So defining somehow some really strong next level and then bringing the machinery of government behind that is a very strong enabler and accelerator of government. The third thing, I'm very glad that Florian brought up the risk side of things, because indeed they are serious and we have to take them seriously. There are risks of privacy, risks of cybersecurity, you know this. What has been very much Estonian journey and the experience is that, but the risks we see as problems to be solved. Risks are not things that have to remain as barriers that we cannot get past. Risks are basically things we can manage. The risk management is a discipline, as you know. So how have we done that? We've done it all the way from how we design systems, how we technologically design them and the procedures around, building up strong defense capability in cybersecurity field, working with other international partners, training, preparing for the worst. I mean, there's a range of things we can do to really be ready for the risk and manage for them. But a lot of it really is with design. So for example, online voting, how do we make sure that the voting is safe and sort of secret enough that nobody forces me to vote in a particular way? We cannot solve that technologically, at least yet. How we do it? With procedural trick. You can revote any number of times. So this is my point being that there are many ways, and if you think about it, we just have to solve the problem. How do we manage the risk? And then we can really go digital so that, even if risks are there, that doesn't mean that we should not be digital. And I think it's also very much how it's been our approach that the risk management we need to do, the investment we need to do into cybersecurity, for example, is also an enabler again, like laws, like platforms. This is something that allows us to be digital, because if we do that investment, if we build up our capability on cybersecurity as well, in hand with digitization, then people can have trust in us when we offer them services online. If they have trust in us, well, that means that they will use the stuff. So if they use the stuff, the benefits come. So it's the necessary other side of the coin of digitization that we have to just basically take good care of. The fourth thing from Estonia's experience, and really being the factor contributing, is exactly experimentation. As I said, we've been feeling for the stones if we cross the river. When we started with X Road back in the day, when we started with e-residence or online voting, we didn't know if and how they will work. We didn't really, there was hunches and there was, let's say, technical vision behind and stuff like that, but it was about saying, let's try this out. And we've had the luck of both political and administrative leadership of really allowing the engineers, the civil servants, the private sector partners to try stuff out, to experiment with things. So I think that might be obviously hard to replicate, but I always sort of also feel that that's really like creates the environment with more stuff and more innovation will happen. This is classic, right? Today, the Estonian government experimentation is a conscious strategy, it's a conscious practice. So not only basically it's like something that has happened, but now it's like people strive for this. So the ways you can design your teams to be ready for that, allocate resource for that, all exactly for the stage of trying what the next thing could be and how to make stuff better all the time. So this experimentation and the willingness to take risks from leadership side has been a very much contributing factor. Now, from all of this, if I start to sum up a bit, if I mentioned this leadership insights, but basically, what to me seems some of the insights from Estonian journey, but I also want to emphasize that having spoken to many peers from around the world, many former peers around the world, for example, I have completed a book with 20 interviews with excellent leaders from around the world. The same sort of themes and practices repeat again and again. So I would be basically willing to say an argument that I think there's certain practices out there that really make up if you want to make a strong advancement than in changing your government digitally. First of all the best digital leaders focus on the how to do stuff. There's always people who say no and why can't things be done, and there's always reasons why not to do stuff, but relentlessly focusing on the how and delivering stuff. I think that's really the core differentiator. As I said with Estonia's example, that even if the cyber risks are there, the focus has been how do we solve for them? How do we handle them? So that's a mindset thing, but it's also a practice thing we can clearly take on and really like build our processes and teams to really like be like that. Secondly, I was quite intrigued that Gregor brought up exactly the sexy applications, because I'm using the same sort of thinking in my end. So there's clearly exactly quick wins that we have to do in our digital government road. Political times are short. We need to deliver. You need to deliver things. You need to show results. You need to immediately fix some political priorities. But in parallel, the hard thing, but the important thing is to have digital strategy and digital transformation work as a portfolio of the sexy stuff, as Gregor said, and the unsexy stuff. Unsexy stuff being really laying the foundations, the platforms, the laws, the practices. Culture change comes from with all of that. So it's easier said than done, but really building up things really from digital leaders' point of view, digital leading ministries' point of view, as a portfolio of the quick wins, the sexy, the politically appealing things, and the hard work that needs to be done relentlessly. That's the trick to really build a sustainable base for the transformation. Third thing, it's been so many times said today already that we're talking not about technology here, we're talking about changing how we work. But you all know this anyway, but it's worth repeating because we see many people stumble in this. Change needs managing. communications. I mean, the classic ABC of change management that you can even learn in any business school, right? I mean, this really holds the digital transformation space as well. We need to manage the change in the people, because then change happens and sticks. Not only is it temporary pilot, but really have a chance to stick in a way. And here, digital, let's say, is no different. ABCs of change management really do really from good communications to everything, careful planning, careful delivery. That's all very relevant here as well. Iteration. What I often see in governments is that because of the reasons that are always, let's say, different stakeholders involved, because of the reasons there's risks involved, we are asked to build a perfect solution. Think about all the aspects and think about all the risks and like build this big things and stuff like that. Whereas all the good digital leaders, and by the way, all the startups, if you think about them, that end up in unicorns or global giants, they all start small and build from this. They iterate. They don't have the answer to all the solutions yet, but they start small and really build from this and go along the way. Call it a pilot, call it a prototype, doesn't matter. But basically, starting small iteration has been the proven way to really have success. E-residency in Estonia, which now works very successfully, it was just basically a very small, tiny pilot project that might have easily failed. But as it worked, we then iterated and brought it further and scaled it up from there. So if we had done big bang and thought about everything beforehand, we would still be trying to planning it basically. So there's governments like planning and analysis, but in digital world, doing is what matters. And that's iteration is a way of doing it. Keeping it simple is an important thing because for the same reasons I just highlighted, we tend to make things too big and complex. In Estonia, each time we failed, we made things too big. As a policy plan, as an architecture, as a system, as a technical system, as process thinking. We can't handle complexity, basically. The more complexity is, the more prone it is to failure. So keeping things small, simple, and then building it from there, you know, all the way to like some very core principles is a way for that. If we go back to the once only example abroad with when we brought in the law of once only, that was keeping it simple. Bring in one principle that really then unleashes the rest of seamless delivery in the government. If we had somehow done a more complex work but tried to really come up with a policy program of getting everyone on board, again, we might still be planning it. In a simple way, we can push things much further. And one of the very last things, it's been again said here, I was very glad to hear that in many ways, again, what we're doing here is transforming the government. This is a chance for us to rethink how government works, not just somehow make today's bureaucracy more automatic. One of my good friends has a very good saying of that. If you automate stupidity, you just get really fast, stupid stuff. So point being that it's a chance for us to rethink, simplify, make stuff so much better with the help of digital tools. And that means that we have to be bold, sometimes in face of our bosses or political bosses, suggest them ways how to really improve stuff. These practices, I still say, they're not Estonia only. They're really what I see so universally around there. But the very last thing that I see universally there, and that's really the beginning point of it all, at the end of the day, the reason to transform a government, just do it. Just start. There's no right or wrong answers necessarily. There's no one right way. Just start. Iterate, you figure it out along the way. Again, Estonia's experience shows this and many others as well. So I hope it was really good to hear that, you know, exactly the great advances made in your region. I hope that there's more coming and clearly like that. So if you're still hesitating, just do it, just start. And as said, look, it's been really my pleasure to be with you. Today we work with other governments as well. I said many of these experiences that I've compiled into books. So I hope that even beyond today's session, if there are ways to help you out, we are always there and happy to do that. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Sim, for this, first of all, very kind offer, but also for the, I think, the great presentation and the insights. Also, many thanks to keeping it within the foreseen time frame and even having some time available for some questions. And I don't know if you spotted this, Sim, but we have some questions in the chat. And let me just pick up on the first one from Lubomir, which I'm sure you will like, Sim. This is about, well, not only about the good practices, but also learning from the wrong, negative, and I would even say, my words, bad practices, right? So question from Lubomir is, well, do we have any idea of available sources, insights, book, literature, websites, any idea where indeed we can learn from, well, can we call them inspiring failures?
There are case studies that have been done, and it's an excellent question. But I mean, I would even answer you the other way around. If you have a chance to go back to even my slides later and think back to what I was saying, the bad practices are the 180 degrees of what I was saying, in a way. So if the point was that what I see that where success has come from is iteration, the bad practice is doing stuff too big, like big bang, sort of all at once, right, and taking forever with it. If it seems to me that building things up from platform point of view is exactly has a really sort of been a contributing factor, and redoing and duplicating.
There seems to be a problem.
And that's the bad practice that unfortunately keeps also repeating from government to government, and even in Estonia sometimes. So that would be one way to answer you. But case studies have been there, and I want to say one more point. As a government CIO, I made a purpose that we did case studies internally if some part of government failed at something, because that was a way to learn from others. Unfortunately, these were like internal only, like we never got them to like a publishing level. But that was also a way to say that even within your governments, if you really share the bad and the experiences, that really helps. So I like the question a lot.
Super, thanks Sim for already highlighting this. I'm sure if you can point in the chat or just at a later occasion to this exact case studies, then we are happy to disseminate things further to Lubomir, but to all the participants in this session. I also have another question from Goran. Basically a double question, Sim, at this stage. Of course, the Estonian example is extremely far-fetched already. But what would be, in your opinion, what is still missing or what is still to be done to even make it more complete and to, I would not say finalize it, but to really add on? I mean, what is still to be done in a subject matter, Goran said? And then the second part, what would you consider as the biggest challenge to transpose the experience, your experience, to other countries, and then I guess countries in the region, if you might head on these two questions?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I'll start from the last bit, and I might switch to video because then you might hear my voice all right. So let me just, Nick, let me know if you still hear me well.
Yes, it's quite okay. We just before had a little interruption, Sim, but I think now it works quite well. Please carry on.
Okay, sorry. So let me just try that. So I'll start from the last bit and try to speak slow. So the biggest challenge to really making stuff happen in other countries and transposing the knowledge like that is honestly willingness. I think the same sort of thing, that somehow thinking that every country is unique and there's nothing that can be copied and so forth. I think that's the hard part. If we really expose ourselves, if we really set up.
We are losing you a bit, Sim. We lost you for 10 seconds, Sim.
All right, sorry, I think the internet's haunting me. So basically, I think my answer was too good for internet. Sorry. So just to recap, the biggest challenge to transposing the lessons is really about, I think, willingness to really just say, keep an open mind, say, hey, what can we learn from this? Can we really take something away? Can we honestly copy something? I know it's hard, again, being there my own myself and really just always saying, hey, we're different and so forth. But honestly, that's why I finished up my talk saying, just do it. In a way, getting the first steps done, getting the next step done, even to the willingly taking over some of the practice and even trying them, experimenting with them in your context. That's where things stop. People come in, listen to the stuff, go home, still try the old way. So sorry to be blunt on this, but that's what it comes down to, the willingness. in Estonia, there's lots of challenges remaining. That's the first part of the question. And the biggest thing is that, quite frankly, even if size has been our advantage, it's also a disadvantage, which means that there's only so much talent to go around with, in a way, let's say technical talent, but also public sector talent. So the quality of services and the digitization maturity is uneven. Some parts of government perform beautifully, and these are really the flagships you can talk about, good practices. Others barely are lagging behind, in a way. And then it can also change, let's say, if people change, to be the completely other way around. So my point being that keeping the level constant, let's say, uniformly high enough and equal enough, because that's the challenge. And that's a training challenge, that's a skilling challenge, that's a culture challenge. I mean, all these things combined. So, and why it matters is that you know this. People expect the same level, the same quality of services from across the government. They don't care if some part of government is good, because they always rank you by the worst. So keeping them, lifting the boats and keeping them all at the same level, that is the core thing I think Estonia is dealing with, and many of us.
Thank you, Sim, for these answers, these insights. And I'm sure that we would, if we would have the rest of the morning available only with the Q&A session, we could also fill this. But thanks to you, Sim, for being with us, giving us these insights, also having some time for the answers. Thanks for the colleagues putting up already some questions in the chat. So with this, thanks again so much, Sim, for this inspiring story. I think just highlighting also the conclusions from Jose before that, well, it's all about supporting the policy goals at the end, policy goals in terms of, well, different policy areas, being it economy, being it social, being it health, education, not only about being efficient, also about being effective. And then a very interesting element that you added, Sim, also being engaging. So it's really like, should also create a more participative, even engaging elements. Highlighting the part of the enablers, as also highlighted by Jose, this is crucial. Digital ID, security elements, e-signatures, being them easy and cheaply available, which is also in the region, Western Balkan region, might be a challenge. The law as an enabler, very interesting, not only as a burden or a hindrance, but also that should enable and even push to digitize processes, but also to introduce concept principles as was not only as a principle, but also as a practice. So I think that's really, an important lesson also for the region. And then last, from my side, and that's also my bridge to the next session, this element of experimentation and creating a mindset within public administration, but also a leadership mindset and the room from leaders, leading civil servants, but also political leaders, to create the room to experiment, which means to make mistakes, but then also learning from mistakes. And I think that was one of your key messages, Sim, like, well, making mistakes is okay, but it's not okay not to learn from them. And so I think that's a crucial thing. So thanks again, Sim. And with this, I'd like to introduce us and you, dear colleagues, into the next panel. A next panel in which we have, I would say, 3 distinguished and high-level panel members, even from the highest political level. So talking about leadership, I think is real at this place. We're really honored and pleased to have the Deputy Minister of the Republic of North Macedonia, Mrs. Slavica Grovska, with us. So please feel really, really warmly welcome, Deputy Prime Minister. Also State Secretary Marina Banovic from Montenegro, Ministry of Public Administration, Digital Society and Media, and also colleague Dara from the Ministry of Public Administration, Local Self-Government in Serbia. So dear colleagues online, if you were thinking that digital is a male show, please think different. So we are really pleased to have a full female panel brought up today, but also moderated in the skillful hands of Boris Koprivnikar, who is a digital government expert these days and former Slovenian Minister of Public Administration. So with this intro, I kindly hand over to the skillful hands of Boris for what is promising to be an excellent panel. So please, Boris, and sorry for the 5 minutes delay, which you can of course fully recuperate in your session. Please do, Boris.
Thank you, Nick, for this kind introduction. And thank you all speakers before, because you gave us a very nice intro for our panel. Like Mr. Viren said, it's when we are talking about the digitalization, we are talking about the horizontal layer, something that everyone uses. Is, by my opinion, like a language. We have to be focused on the enablers, not only on the end results. And like Florian said, technology is not the problem. We have other problems: culture, silo organization, the culture of data sharing. Be focused on our political goals, because the digital solutions are always just a tool, nothing more than a tool. Some kind is very sophisticated, and also what Sim stressed out. It's not something that you do, it's a process, it's a path that you have to walk through, and then you are approaching to the result which is never reached. And when we talked with our panelists before, I do believe that this is why we have excellent starting points for our next discussion. Also about what Sim said, unsexy work, about the background systems, connecting, putting registers online. So the panelists, I would maybe start with the question of one of the enablers, that's legislation and organization. We are talking about Western Balkan countries which are in the path to the EU, and we are using EU guidelines and EU legislation often as a ground. So my question to you is, do you find that this EU legislation is a good ground also for Western Balkan countries, and how to implement it in the local legislation? Because having a legal ground is very difficult, but when you have it, very powerful. So maybe Ms. Hrkovska, would you start? What is your point about the EU legislation, how useful it is for the Western Balkan countries?
Yes. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here today with you and share some of our thoughts and experiences. I have to admit that I'm a little bit frustrated after after hearing the experience of Estonians, but at the same time, I'm very challenging, because we know what is the goal that we all would like to reach. Having in mind all best practices, but as we have discussed before, also learning from the mistakes and bad experiences, I would say, or experimentations with the bad outcome, not to repeat them again. Of course, in that way, those kind of experiences is very crucial for us, and having EU legislation in mind is also very important as a common ground for starting creating the domestic policies. But we have to have in mind that our society is in a different level of starting point of achieving the same goals, and we need to adopt the European policies in accordance to the domestic conditions. Because from my point of view, it is important to have a laws that will be applicable and that will make a serious outcome to the society, instead of having just copy-pasted the laws or European experiences, and then wouldn't be possible, without being possible to implement them because of the different situation in our society. If I may state it very clear and very short, and if you have any other questions, I would be happy to answer further.
What's about your look, Ms. Grvara? How you implemented your legal changes in Serbia?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me on this very important conference regarding the Serbia law, and regarding because we are talking now about the digitalization and e-government. I really have to say that we have like the complete circle regarding the law on e-government, and with all bylaws. Now we are in the phase when we need to think about some directives of the EU that are really new and fresh. So that means that we need, I mean, changing harmonizing the law, Serbian law with the directive of EU. It's not only one law and it's not only one ministry. This is the process. This is the very complicated process. And I really agree with Slavica that we need, that it's not enough just to copy paste from directive to the laws. We need to think deeper. So bearing in mind that we have like, I will give you the example of the directive of reuse of data that we need to change now, because the directive is new from the last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. So now we will need to change at least 2 laws, and 3 ministries will need to be included in that. So it is challenging, but we will do that.
Probably, Ms. Banovic, your experience is similar, I guess, but I would also like to challenge you. How do you find what works and how to organize the government and the services to be really effective? And what's always important in the digitalization, because we are competing between different countries and cooperating, of course. So it's not only the question, will you do it? The question is how fast you will do it, and what is the speed of change? What contributes to it?
Yes, I think this is kind of a crucial question that everybody in the region is facing, how fast we can do the change. And legislation is part of the answer, let's say, if not of the problem. So maybe shortly to reflect to that, in my opinion, since we are on the EU accession path, there is no question whether we would need to integrate the EU directives or not. The question is how to do that in a smart way. So one thing is that basically our governments from the region, I would say, when they make some new law or some changes, they need to look into the experiences of other countries. And as we heard also this morning, we do not have to be afraid of stealing with pride and copy with the sense. So this is one way to do that, and why not to look into the EU directives where we are doing this. Another thing is also sometimes we need to start with our need. What do we need, and what is the right timing to do the change of the law? Because we know that changing the laws is an extensive and difficult process. So what we do here is, in any occasion when we need anyhow to open the law for changes, we have the list of the valid new directives that are that need to be that we need to integrate in our laws, and we do that if we have to open the law in any case. So, for example, now we are doing the changes in law on information on cybersecurity, and we will integrate NIS, the NIS directive too, because yes, this is an occasion to do that in a kind of smart and efficient way. Regarding the second thing you mentioned, how about the speed of the change, that's really kind of in the heart of the digital transformation in the region. We are doing things, but we are not doing that with a good pace, I would say, or we are not happy with the pace we are doing the change, and this leads us to probably a couple of things. One is a political push for digital transformation, because it's essential. And the second thing is that basically we would need maybe organizational models to rethink when we are talking about faster digital transformation. In Montenegro, we are looking into the models that are existing in other countries that are further away on the road of digital transformation like US and UK, and also from recently some countries on some countries in the region, so Slovenia and Serbia. We are basically having this, actually exploring the centralized model of digital transformation governance, meaning that this function is in a way centralized, close to the political decision-making points, so Prime Minister. And I would say in combination of these two things, operational and political, this could be a way to go.
Ms. Banovic, you opened important question is also the political sponsorship support for the digitalization. Can you maybe Ms. Ravare, can you comment on this, because we know that Serbia in last times really speeded up. What is the organizational or political support or some needs that you have, outside pressure? What was influence on this speeding up of digital transformation?
Yeah, for sure. The most important thing was that we had extremely big support from our Prime Minister, because she is very aware how important is digitalization for our country, for the first of all, for the citizen, for the civil servants, for the businesses. And that was like the push up for us who are working in the digitalization to have wings to do more and to do better and to be more effective. Also, from 2017, we have like the Office for IT, which is working very close to the Prime Minister office, and they are responsible for the implementation of the everything what we are in the government are dealing with. So this was a very important in the developing of e-services, etc. So I would really like to emphasize that political will and the awareness of the cabinet of the Prime Minister is the most important. But bearing in mind that we don't know what will happen in the future, are we going to have the same Prime Minister or the new Prime Minister? And we will try to change. First of all, we are thinking to change the mindset, first of all, of the civil servants. So we would like to work on the changing management. So we want them to be more aware of the jobs they are doing. So this is the next step. And I would also like to emphasize that we have a very important strategy for public administration reform, because the Ministry of Public Administration is in charge for the reform in the Republic of Serbia. And our goal is to have like the legally framed standardized, not only e-services, but we want to standardize, we have to legally standardize services in our country. And this is the next big step, because we also planning to have like a special organ, special institution, independent institution who will follow and who will work on the controlling of the quality of the services. This is also important for us. So, yeah.
You again touched some of very important things that also, if we are following the Estonian case, the basis standard ID and standardization of all data exchange, and this is how I believe the key for success. But you also mentioned Office of IT as a central coordination body, of course, with the political will. Ms. Gerkowska, do you find this way of organization be possible? And can you also touch a little bit about the e-services? How are they used and how widely are they spread? Are they successful when you publish them and put them to use? And if this centralized body is maybe the way to speed up digitalization.
Yes, I cannot agree more that political will and political leadership is highly important in this process. And I would like to mention that those experiences are very crucial for us, and the support that Prime Minister of North Macedonia is giving to this process is highly on his agenda, having in mind that he has a specific counselor for digitalization in his cabinet on one hand. On the other hand, I would like to mention that all topics regarding the digitalization are having priority on the governmental session, and they are not part of the regular agenda on the governmental session, but they do have a priority, and they're the first one to speak on, or to discuss about that, together with the topics on anti-corruption policies. So those are two topics that are highly on agenda of the government and having priorities to be discussed without even before starting with the regular agenda on the government's session. Keeping in mind about talking about the e-services, it is very important how you will communicate them among the public, and how you will present the beneficial of the e-services in the public. Because we have to have in mind that from my point of view, having digital tools is one of the possibility to change the mindset of the citizens that I'm sure that we would all like to achieve. Which is one of the most complicated maybe target, because if we have in mind the way that we have been all working with the paperwork all these years, it's very difficult to change the mindset of people, how to approach and how to use the e-services. So far, I think that we can be satisfied with part of the e-services. Because unfortunately we don't have EID still in North Macedonia, but we are having digital e-services in taxes, in the revenue office, in other institutions that are oriented in the services for the citizens, and they're usable from the point of view where the registers have been filled with the data that has been already only on paper till now. So it is a long process on one hand, but as you said, we need quick wins, as the previous discussions said, we need quick wins so we can provide those kind of services to the citizens also.
Ms. Barnish, can you also comment more on these e-services? What Ms. Garkowska said, that you have to have a background digital register, that you have somewhere to connect e-services, but there is also other question is how to promote, how to achieve the high use of it. Is it when they are useful, or they are cute or simple? And what are your experiences about building e-services?
Yes, just yesterday we finalized a survey, and the results were saying that what is the most important thing for the citizens to have to access the services, what is for them important. So they said that what they want is that services fully online. So far it was not the case in Montenegro. Basically, the request for the service was online, and then there were people working on the request and submitting back the answer, the document, either via email or via post. But and also citizens needed to go to the post office or to the bank or to pay for that service. So this so customer experience or user experience is, I think, this actually translates into the user experience, is something that decides that makes citizen use the e-service or not. The second thing they were emphasizing is promotion. So they were, let's say, pointing out that they are not aware of the existence of certain e-services, or actually availability of certain e-services. So this was the second important reason for the citizens to go for e-service or not. Currently, we are working exactly on making this journey fully online. So on one side, we integrated eID. We have the instrument 2 years already in place, but it was basically existing, and most of the citizens were using it as a simple eID card. They were not aware of the real functionalities of the eID. So now with the promotional campaign, we are trying to raise the awareness of citizens about the existence of this instrument. We are facilitating the use of it with the distribution of free eID readers. And finally, we are integrating it with the services, making e-services available and opened by eID, and finally, on the end, making possible also to pay for e-service online, which was not the case before. So we are completing the user's journey regarding the e-services, which probably will contribute to the usage. To increase usage of e-services, together with the promotion and the production of new e-services. What else I would like to add to that? Of course, back-end things are very important. They are not visible to citizens, and citizens should not worry about it, but it is a big part of the work of us in the public administration. I'm relatively new as a public servant, and probably today is also the last day of my mandate as a state secretary in the Ministry of Public Administration. We're about to vote for the new government, but this year was really very learningful for me. And I remember when I started to work here, one of the first expressions I learned was Ministry of Public Administration, Digital Society and Media is a horizontal ministry. For me, that was another buzzword. But after a year time in the position, I really fully understand the weight of this, being horizontal, having duties and obligations to fulfill, but not having as many instruments to fulfill this kind of duties that are in front of us. And I think actually that we can illustrate that on the example of interoperability, where actually we have an excellent law that prescribes that all the registers are made available on the GSB system, but actually the progress is of doing that by institutions, even if they are legally obliged, is not exceptional, I would say. And that requires basically a lot of advocacy work from the ministry in order to explain and to break the resistance, break the restrictive interpretation of laws that institutions have, in order to make this really a basic instrument available for the production of e-services.
Thank you. That was a very important intro, because we need to know to have e-services fully e. That means from the starting registry to the end user, and of course horizontal. Ms. Guevara, you mentioned before public servants, and we were discussing it before, because what's the problem in politics is that always works in periods of 4 or 5 years and then changes. Why to focus on the civil servants? Is this case of stability, or to reduce the opposition of changes?
Yeah, I will give an example. Now we are working with the World Bank on the very big project that will include middle management, because civil servants like a middle management, they are staying, they are always there. So we want to have like the professional middle management civil servants to work, to continue working on not only on digitalization, but in other jobs regarding the government. So that's why it is very important to change, first of all, to change their mindset. Why are they working? Why is it important to have them, to give them like the more important role in the whole process, because we want them to stay. We want them to be sustainable in the government, because we need people, more people with a long term in a government, because they will stay. So that's why it's important, and I hope that we will have results with this project. And I am so happy that now we are in the process of starting the training sessions with the middle management in the whole government. So I will tell you the results in the future.
This is something that I guess we will all be very interested in, because also by my experience, the catch in the middle management, if you enable and manage them to be cooperative, then all the problems with the horizontal silo organization, access to data, digitalization of registries are manageable if people are here.
Exactly.
And
yes. We need them to be, first of all, digitally literate. Because we figure out that we have lots of civil servants, but they are not enough digitally literate. So now we also need to work on that. And this is the process. We cannot have big results from the night to day, but that is something that is very important. Like I said before, this is also the part of the standardization of the not only services, but with the whole middle management of the civil servants. This is the whole package that we need to work in the future.
If I would slowly try to come to the conclusion, maybe you could agree that what we need is, of course, political support that really drives the car that we are all sitting on. And if we are interested in digitalization and literate enough to know that the digital solutions have to be equal value of, let's say, paper-based procedures, that we have to focus on the end user. We were talking about the promotion, explaining the services, and on the other hand, we have to be focused on those who provide services, and this is basically middle management. They are using the services, so then we have a complete circle. And again, with this case, maybe we could follow what Sim presented before. Focus on working services that are really used, maybe simple, and then growing up. Could you agree with this, or we need to have a whole set of services before we publish it?
Yeah, first of all, the main focus are citizens. This is something that is most important for all of us who are working in the government, that the citizens are the main users of all services. And our new strategy for public administration emphasizes the citizen like the main users. So we also need to work on not only to digitally literate to the civil servants, we also need to work on the citizen to help them to use those services on the simplest, most way. So that means we have like the national portal for e-government. We have very good services on that portal, but we need to have like the simple use for citizen. And this is also the way how the citizen will trust the government, and to help with that trust, we are on the right path how to help them. So this is one of the ways how to make them to believe us on our work. Yeah.
Right. These
Let
are
me add something on this because I believe it's very important. The biggest obstacle of accepting the digitalization of the processes is from the administration side, because they believe that they might lose their job if we introduce digital tools and there will no be needs of them, which is very wrong. So we need to have several parallel processes actually to show them, as Dara was saying, to literate them that though these digital tools are just the tools to make their job more efficient, because what the citizens is expecting from us is to provide services that will be more efficient to them, to provide the services quickly, but also in a professional way. So to overcome that obstacle from the administrative point of view, it is very important, as Dara said, to literate them and to convince them that it is just a tool that will help to do their work. And when I was talking about changing the mindset, that was one of the things that I have in mind. So that is another thing that we need to have in mind during this process. So thank you.
So, with another words, it's easy to win the game where your whole team is cooperating and very skilled. Then it's easy to play the game. And it's also, maybe Nick, if you have some additional questions, but for me, it's very interesting lately when we are talking about the digitalization. We are not talking about the programming and building services and so on. We are talking about the motivation, leadership, coordination, standardization, and basically these are the key issues, key enablers, like Mr. Viran said before, to speed up the digitalization. And the experience in the Western Balkan countries obviously is very, very similar.
Thank you so much for this nice way of laying it all down and formulating it all together, Boris. I probably couldn't agree more. And before thanking the panelists for I think the excellent discussion, just with one eye also picking up on the chat, where there was a question on the leadership, and I think you already integrated this, Boris, to definitely a certain extent. Also a question on the different kind of models, being them centralized, being them decentralized. I think also you picked up, Boris, in the whole discussion. There is one question remaining, that is on the quality management instruments, that is also focusing on satisfaction surveys and like closing the cycle. I think it has been mentioned by all of the three panel members, the whole user experience and centricity in designing services. So to close the circle, then also getting the final feedback on how satisfied, dissatisfied, and on what elements they are, that this is a crucial thing. I think we would like the time to go into extent into this. We have some figures and experiences ourselves that we can share with the participants and with the audience. We will do so after the webinar, but unfortunately it was, I would say, take us too long to really open also that part in the discussion. So let me thank you all once more, Mrs. Grovska, Mrs. Banovic, and also Mrs. Gavera, for, I think, the excellent discussion, for showing us all these insights, these highlights, but even more to show your leadership, even at the highest levels, political levels, in driving this whole file, but this actually the whole work forward in your countries. So I think with this, the future in the whole digital transformation looks promising, and where we have highlighted even some shortcomings, or where there are even some gaps or blind spots, we hope that with your commitment and dedication and leadership, these can also be filled in the future. So thank you once more, and also a kind thanks to Boris for moderating this panel in such an excellent way. So many thanks to all of you. With this, and also touching upon a very important aspect in the discussion, like one of the key enablers, and interoperability as an enabler, but as really a whole area in itself, I think it's also an excellent moment to move to our next keynote speaker in really deepening this interoperability aspect even more. With the next speaker, I mean Maximilian Strootman. Max is the Deputy Head of Unit in the Interoperability Unit. Hi Max, we can see you in the Interoperability Unit in DG Digit of the European Commission. And besides DG NEAR as our close, well, ally and our, what we would call our tutel in for Sigma, we also work very closely and in a very, very pleasant way together with DG Digit in the European Commission. And as we all know, DG Digit in the past has been doing extremely interesting work, supporting the EU member states. But we thought it would also be an excellent occasion to invite Digit, and in the person of Max, to also show what Digit has been doing, but also what is on the table. So Max will present you some really news, which is really fresh, not even published. I will not I will not spoil Max. I will give you the the primer, but just to warm up the audience, and also how it could be useful for the Western Balkan region. So with this Max, really the pleasure is ours to have you with us, and the floor is all yours to guide us into your work, into the future, and also how it connects to the Western Balkan region. Please, Max.
Hello, Nick. Many thanks for these kind introductory words, and great to be with all of you. And I'm super thrilled following the discussion so far. Super excited because what I see, what you're discussing, is what is really, really close to our heart. And so I feel just an extremely positive encouragement from all sides on the massive task that we have all engaged on, that we are engaging on. So really very, very good vibes listening to you. The only point was that I couldn't join from the very beginning, and this, unfortunately, for a very good reason, because we are working on a project together with other colleagues in other parts of the Commission in DG Connect on smart cities, on communities around the Living in the EU movement. And so there was a project panel going on where I needed to be there. But I think also the regional local cooperation on digital transformation is a massive task where the doors are open all across Europe for working together, you, us, partners in the European neighborhood. Fantastic. So just starting with this, how excited I'm there with you. I've been listening to the panel before and partly to the discussion, and picking up on what Nick just said, what Boris concluded from the ministerial panel before, I thought it was just fascinating how this resonates with us. And allow me 3 short points to make the link. The importance of the political buy-in, the tone from the top, the culture, the mindset that goes through our organizations from the political top to the doers at the desks, servicing, helping citizen people and businesses. The importance, second point, of legal clarity and structure. And I will come back to that because this is something that we are grappling with in the environment of interoperability. And then the third one, Nick was kind enough to say, but he was kind enough not to say it exactly as I noted it, the importance of the unsexy work. One of the ministers said it just before in the panel, I think. Lots of unsexy work going on. And I know that Nick thought about us, about interoperability and what we are doing in the Commission. But that is still very important because in order to achieve our goals in digital government, we need this unsexy, boring stuff in the basement of our buildings, of our organizations that are the enablers in order for the sun to shine and the operations to work for people and businesses. When we just, so 3 points that I pick up that I think resonate well, I hope, in what I have to say, and then go into the next panel. When we discussed with Nick, he said, and I went immediately into our ideas that we have, why we think that what we are doing at the EU level is important for the Western Balkans and why the Western Balkans are essential for our work, for the future of our work. He said, okay, stop. All interesting, but first say where you come from. And maybe this is a little bit because I'm a bit hesitant to always come, the Commission, and everybody gets, oh gosh, the Commission, and they far away in Brussels. They write all sorts of strange laws and guidelines, and who has to implement it and how does it work. And they have no clue how things work on the ground, in particular in digital government. So I'm always a bit shy to say I'm coming from the Commission. And the next thing is that I'm shy to say that I come out of the informatics department, because that's what I'm working on. Our team, the Interoperability unit, is part of the Commission's own IT department. And then usually you lose half the audience and people go into their emails and do other stuff. IT department. These are the people who used to bring in the Commission the printers and the computers, and you got thrown at the computers because nothing ever works. But we have seen a cultural change, a mindset change slowly happening actually on both sides. On the side of the IT department and on the side of the policy departments in the Commission, away from give me a new computer, give me a new printer, why does this not work, to saying, how would you go about building a new service? How would you go about building a new information system that underpins, let's say, justice and home affairs or agricultural policy? How would you do that? Can you help us with issues around cloud and security? And these things have been coming more and more and more. And I have to admit that also the IT department was not always prepared for that. Because within the IT department, it was very comfortable to be in your niche and say, well, business comes to me, you tell me what to do, and then we do it, and we see whether it works. But to engage from the very beginning was not always something that was natural for both sides. But we believe, and that's what I hear out of the discussion that we just had that Boris led, is it is essential that the IT expertise side and the policy side, the people who have to serve every day people and businesses, come together when it is about designing digital government strategies and services. And so this is quite an interesting cultural shift that we see happening. And that, by the way, is in the business side, in big multinational companies, is already practice. If you see, for example, the role that chief IT officers, CIOs have on company boards. So that's something that is very important. So that's just to position ourselves where our department, the acronym is DIGIT within the Commission, is evolving its role, it's redefining its role together with the policy departments. We have this thinking under an umbrella that we call digital ready. You can call it whatever. But we would like that in the future, the policies that the Commission is developing, together with member states, together with businesses, with stakeholders, NGOs, together with the partners of the European Union, are digital ready by design from the very early stages of thinking about a new policy, of running a policy. And this, for example, we try to push through the Commission in an internal document now that is the new upcoming digital strategy of the Commission in cooperation with the Secretariat General and the policy department, saying, let's anchor this as a principle in policy making for the EU. So lengthy positioning, IT, policy, digital ready, interoperable by design policy making in the future. A second point that matters a lot for us, on Guy's the introduction. So as a first point, what is our operational logic? Digital ready and the role of the public sector. That for you, and I hear this out of the discussion, is self-evident, but it has not been self-evident in the general discourse on digital transformation. And I remember that with Boris in the past, we have discussed this with the Commissioner a lot. So the role, the transformative power, the transformative potential of the public sector for the digital transformation of the society and the economy is something that I think historically has been neglected. Because we focused, and it's absolutely right, we focused a lot on business, on the digital transformation of industry, massively important, absolutely essential, on startups, on coding skills, and so on and so on, absolutely essential. But by focusing mainly on this, we lost track that if we manage to do, and this was the panel just discussing before, an inclusive, open transformation, digital transformation of the public sector, we have half the GDP with us. if we do it in a particular way, we can push, we can take the economy with us. This is something that I think has been neglected in the past. And it is for us very positive that we see that at EU level, at highest political level, this understanding is growing. And we see this, for example, in the declaration, the ministerial declaration that has been adopted under the German presidency, the so-called Berlin Declaration 1.5 years ago, that sets the path for a values-driven, inclusive and open digital transformation of Europe and its partners in order to create a model, an inclusive model of digital that is different to authoritarian or overtly libertarian models. These things, by the way, have been taken up again in ministerial declarations under the Portuguese presidency with a strong focus on the link to businesses, because it is not only the public sector in itself that acts, but it is the public sector in cooperation with businesses, with innovative startups, with innovative small companies that in particular exist en masse in the Western Balkans. And again, it has been confirmed that this relates nicely to the panel before by the public administration ministers from across the EU in the so-called Strasbourg Declaration. So all these declarations, massive declarations, are all available online, but I think it fits very well. Value-driven, inclusive, open, interoperable digital transformation. So this I see a little bit as the operational logic under which we're working. This was my first point. The second point is now, how do we put this into practice? And there we have a few points that we hopefully come up, as Nick said, in the next steps. As a link between this operational logic, on what basis do we operate, what is the mindset in which we operate, and how we do it, I would like to sum up for interoperability, which is the unsexy enabling topic that we try to push, that we think is essential for a functioning digital transformation, is interoperability. All of this, what we are discussing, cannot be done alone. Because it's very nice that I'm interoperable with myself. And Nick said in the discussion, it's like a dog that is chasing the tail, runs around in circles. Looks nice, looks a bit funny, but doesn't achieve anything. So we cannot do, none of us can do interoperability alone. And an important second aspect is it cannot ever be done, ticked off. You cannot say now I'm interoperable, because it is only a photograph of today. It will not last unless we will have innovation built in the circuit. So how do we do that? Not alone and not once for all, but in constant evolution. And there we have two elements. It is the policy side. And I come back to the point that I said in the beginning, we need legal clarity. So far, honestly, at EU level on interoperability, we did not have it. We have a very nice high-level concept, a model for interoperability that probably all of you know, the European Interoperability Framework, that is occasionally reworked and revised, and it is actually broadly accepted, not only at EU level, but also in many of your countries and actually across the world. It is a conceptual model. It stays very high level. I think it is essential because it sets the conditions, the elements that it is not, somebody said it before, not only technical, but also legal, organizational, and semantic. And some, like our colleagues from the regional and smart cities movement, say also cultural. But it stays voluntary. It stays a nice text that I use or I don't use. How do I measure it? How do I concretely go about? And this, the understanding that this is not enough, that we don't have the legal clarity and certainty and structure, led to a push from mainly the CIOs of the EU member states, but also the CIOs from our partners in the Western Balkans, saying you need to make it obligatory. You cannot just say it's like a hobby of a few people and you do it or not. You need to have a solid legal basis for that. From the occasional voluntary cooperation to an obligatory setting of a baseline and structural governance cooperation. And on this, the basis of this assumption, we are now working, just as we speak these days, on writing a regulation, an EU regulation, the first ever regulation on interoperability of the public sector. Well, we come to a point that I mentioned before. How can we ensure innovation in all of this? How can we ensure that this remains valid also maybe in 5 years and it is not just a photograph of today? For this reason, we said we don't enshrine the EIF into law, which was the standard point, but we say we enshrine cooperation in law. We don't make obligatory any standard, any specification, any rule, any tool as of today, because then we are boxed in already tomorrow. No, but we make obligatory the cooperation around this. And we create a mechanism that is transparent and accountable and open and participative and conclusive, how we reach, for example, the next step of the European interoperability framework. So one important element, creating a clear governance responsibilities. And we want the CIOs to be in charge of interoperability cooperation. Around that, we want something like an open source community of activists, of people who have a stake because they are practitioners, because they are business owners, because they are academics, because they are political representatives, to build a supporting community around governance, a board of CIOs, a community. And these people are tasked to come up with rules, and that's obligatory in the new, well, hopefully that's what we try to write into the law if it then comes out in the summer. An impact assessment on interoperability if you create a new service, if you build a new service, if you change a system, an existing service, you do an impact assessment on interoperability. And you can use for this assessment digital ready, interoperable ready policymaking, a catalog of tools, assets, specification standards that have proven useful, not only at EU level, but from the member states, from a city, a regional government, from a partner country, from a partner city in the Western Balkans, for example, public, open for reuse, like a catalog, like a store front, where you can put in things, it is tested, it is interoperable, you can reuse it, you can build on it and make it better. Sharing these assets, making them better, improving them, using them for projects to accompany in a digital ready policy making sense, for example, the next generation of the Green Deal laws that will come out of the Commission. Do GovTech cooperation between the public and the private sector. Experimentation, short, quick projects. So this is the ideas that we write in this law, in the draft law, as we say for the moment, that hopefully will find its way through the Commission and will be proposed formally by the Commission in the summer. So it's just a sneak preview of ideas that we have at this stage. No commitment that it is like this. And for this reason, it would be also very good to have your comments and ideas around that. As I said, we want to design this law tech ready in itself, no lock-in, full transparency, reliability, and openness for innovation. In order to support this, we have the Digital Europe program that many of you will know, that for us is a successor in our part for interoperability of the old ISA Squared and ISA programs that have come to an end, where we have funding to support these projects, these innovation projects, and we have funding to maintain publicly available assets on interoperability, reusable for everybody publicly around the world, and also improvable for everybody, the Western Balkans, like our partner countries elsewhere. GovTech again plays a big role. And if you allow me here to say, and come maybe then to my closing point, how about international cooperation in this? How about building connections to the Western Balkans? All of these things, we want them publicly available. We want them built together in this kind of open source community spirit. But it is also important, and I was very happy to have North Macedonia and Montenegro before in the panel, because both of these countries have been formal members of the old ISA Squared program. And we would love to welcome the Western Balkan countries in the new Digital Europe program in order to continue this cooperation. The door is open. It's a little bit more complicated than it used to be in the ISA Squared program where we were in charge on our own. And here the program is bigger, but please do consider this. And I know that Albania, I think, has already been in contact. So to close on this one, the international cooperation for us is essential. It is built in our policy ideas and in our support practices. It is an essential building element, a supporting element of our policy approach. And we are very happy to be working with Engineer. I think Florian was here, and with Nick and colleagues and you all on this. Well, this sort of unsexy work on interoperability in the background, we think it is very important. It needs a lot of patience. It needs a lot of work together, of commitment, of openness and transparency and partnership. And it is only possible if we constantly reinvent it. And our doors are open. I know there is great skills and lots of openness on your side, so I'm really looking very positively forward. Thanks for listening and looking forward to the debate.
Thank you, Max. It was a pleasure listening, and I promised that you would give some sneak preview on the work you are currently, you and the whole team and within the Commission, sorry, in a whole. And I think this is really thrilling to hear this, because this will, in terms of pushing the interoperability as the backbone of many of the things we have been discussing before, this will be excellent. Also opening up, as you did and as you mentioned before, opening up to the Western Balkan countries to join these efforts, not to only use but really also to co-design. I think this is really great to hear, and we have been discussing this before, that we as Sigma stand ready to really also be an ally with you, but also with the Western Balkan economies bilaterally and in global, to also facilitate and to support this work. And I'm quite sure that with the RESPA director, Maya, here with us, that I'm quite sure that RESPA also would fully adhere to this objective. I would propose at this stage that we might set up another discussion session purely on this, Max, that we could offer, really like facilitating an online platform where we invite interested people from the Western Balkan region in discussing with you and Digit colleagues, together with RESPA and even RCC involved and other actors that are willing to really see how we can push this file forward, because I think this is what it deserves, and happy as Sigma to play our role content-wise, but also in facilitating this kind of work. So for now, many thanks, Max. I just saw one question in the chat on the change of role of IT departments, not only within the Commission, but also within member states, that the strategic role has been, or the role moving into a strategic role has been really because of COVID, but also because of, well, the policy objectives have been completely changed. And I think this is what you nicely explained in the very beginning. So thanks for the question, but even much more thank you, Max, for this really excellent introduction. And I think the invitation has been launched, and we will follow up from the different sides on really making this a success altogether. So thanks again, Max. With this, I already introduced in a bit the final panel, and we are slowly also coming to the final stages of this event. But with Max, I think we also lay down some foundations for the final panel. A final panel that we would like to dedicate with Albania, Kosovo, and with Bosnia and Herzegovina colleagues on the aspects of, well, key aspects, enablers into digital governance in the region. A panel that will be moderated by our good colleagues, friends from RESPA, and we are extremely pleased to have the fresh and new director, Maya Hanjiska, with us as the RESPA director to moderate this panel. So I would immediately hand over to you, Maya, to introduce your panel members and to take us into the interesting panel for sure. Thank you, Maya.
Thanks so much, Nick. Well, it is an immense pleasure to moderate today's stellar panel of true practitioners, and actually some of the key ones, and the women and men power that is driving the leap in terms of service delivery enhancement that your Sigma reports have amply demonstrated. So this honor is so much greater as this is among the first engagements since I am assuming the new role in RESPA as the regionally owned organization that is focusing on advancing the public administration reforms in the region. And really, truly, our public administration systems must be the backbone that is sustaining all the important reform processes underway. Be this the twin transitions we're discussing, be this the challenging EU accession process that we have all entered into, or the more general resilience building reforms related to the post-pandemic or even to the war situation or to any other disruptive trends that are coming in the future. So really these systems need to be both continuously and as systematically supported from all sides. And here, Nick, if you allow me just a note, the institutional partnership that we're having with Sigma is essential for us to both provide this targeted capacity building in priority areas, but also to recognize the good practices. This is something that we are going to do in today's panel to nurture this peer learning and promote upscaling. So really working in full sync in the period to come for the maximum benefit of our region is the way forward. And here, echoing Gregor's remark from the intro, I would like just to also stress the unique joint initiative that we have launched, the Public Administration Awards, that are aimed at recognizing the governance initiatives that have contributed to bettering the citizens' life in the region. So with our region in dire need of also positive cases and solutions, really heartfelt encouragement to all the public civil servants on all the levels that are joining us today to really take active part, apply and contribute to the launch call, because success, breeds inspiration. So let's all really give our contribution to what is essentially a positive agenda. So now coming back to really to our core panel of today. So this second panel will fit perfectly and complement the first one, which really shed light on the more strategic policy outcomes, stressing the element of political commitment and buy-in. What we'll attempt to do in the next 20 minutes or so in the next one, we'll seek to give this practical insights in how have the governments, walked the talk. Really how to recognize what opportunities were there, which were harnessed, but also where have been any hiccups or what are the outstanding challenges and what's next in terms of processes with the particular focus on the digital enablers and services. I'm happy to be joined today by Ms. Nevila Repishti, the director of the governmental reporter in Albania, and Ms. Romina Kostani, the director of Department of Innovation and eGov Promotion within the National Agency of Information Society, or NICE, as we would often abbreviate. The Chief Technology Officer in Kosovo, Mr. Lulezon Yegu, who is really now ensuring this whole of a government and center of government approach, and the head of director within the agency for the identification document registers and data exchange in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Nermin Bečirbak. So in terms of scenario, as this is a rather short panel, we will go with 2 rounds of brief interventions, and of course the panelists need to be pretty concise in terms of the intervention time. With a particular now side note, I know that the colleagues from Albania are particularly in a dynamic period, especially after the announcement of fully switching the services to online mode. So also out of respect for their busy schedules today. So with this brief note, it will be my pleasure if we can start with you, Nevila. And actually, according to the latest data, we see that the Albania platform currently provides actually in the excess of 1,200 electronic services to citizens and businesses accounting to around 95% of the public services available in Albania. And of course, it's an impressive figure as such. And this makes us eager to get your perspective on the effectiveness of those services that you're providing, and a comment on the ways that you are also ensuring that no one is left behind. So can you also please reflect on the current level of communication between the citizens and the Albanian administration in regards to the public services delivery, and what have been the recent initiatives in the Albanian framework in terms of improving this type of communication? So back to you, Nabila, really looking forward for your insights on this very important question on effectiveness and communication and leaving no one behind.
Thank you. Hello to everyone. It's very nice to be part of this panel and sharing the experience of our country. Found in a long wave of digitalization, as you mentioned, Albania is currently undergoing one of the most important transformation processes on public service delivery and digitalization. It's true, from January 2020, for 95% of the public services, the application is done only online through e-Albania portal. The novelty that started since from January, as I mentioned, was that the associated documents of the application form were not more obliged, an obligation of the citizens or the businesses to be associated, but is the public employee through a dedicated national centralized electronic system that exchange this document with starting almost with the principal ones only. Till now, we can say that 110,000 documents has been saved and has been generated from the public employees. But what is finalizing the process and what was launched during this day, even by the Prime Minister, but it's going to be finalized as we call the close of the physical portal starting from May 1, 2022, will be that not only the application, but even the electronic response, the administrative document electronically signed, will be obtained electronically through the profile on the e-Albania portal of the application. So it means that for the 95% of the public services that don't need a physical presence of the citizen or the vehicle, not only the application with all the reduced associated documents that are issued by public institutions, but even the electronic response, the final administrative document will be obtained online. So we can say that we will have, starting from May 1, 2022, all the public services, the 95%, level 4 of automation. And another thing that we can share is that, of course, until now we have 55 electronic documents that are generated in real time with electronic seal, and to obtain this for all the state document means that you have to have all the physical archives digitalized, and this is not a process that can be done so easily. But using the electronic signature document circulation system, which is the national centralized electronic system that the public employee have been using for 2 years for exchanging and obtaining the associated document, this will be the system that will make possible to reply to every application from the public institutions with electronically, signing electronically the document. So it will mean that from the beginning of May, the number of the physical offices and counters will be reduced by 3 times, and by reducing the number of counters, by reducing the face-to-face contact of the applicant and the public offices employees, It means that we can tackle corruption and bribes, save time, save money, and also put this to end queue forever. It also means zero paper, zero printers or photocopies that depreciate, and all the remaining counters will be providing those 5% of services, as we mentioned, that need the physical presence of the citizens or the vehicle is required. So I think that if we can say that till now we have been sharing some numbers that we have saved time for the citizen, they even doing on the application online, they have been evitating so much waiting in queues. We have calculated that for 2 years we have saved more than 800 years on waiting queues, and since the electronic documents are generated in real time online, you don't have to pay more the fees that was mandatory when you were obtaining this kind of document on the physical portals. Until now, we can say that we have saved to the Albanian citizen and businesses just from generating online the administrative document, the 55 of them, more than 7.1 million euros. So the efficiency can be measured even with the time, the cost reduced, the effectiveness, and the one that we have been facing during the experience of the digitalization of the application forms from Albania was maybe sometimes the compliance that we're having, that we have applied, but we haven't received the answer just in time. Every service in Albania have a time delivery that depend from the kind of services and the institutional internal procedures. So with obtaining every administrative document with obtaining it electronically, it means that we will be able, and it will be the National Agency of Co-Governance, an institution in Albania, that will be monitoring the institutions on the time delivery of the services. So we can say that if we have been saying that the efficiency was very high in reducing time and cost, this will cover even to have better served citizens and businesses in Albania, since we are closing all the cycle going electronically from the application till the delivery of the public services.
Thank you so much, Nabila, for this important news, and of course looking forward for this announced May advancements, while of course always keeping the perspective of minding the digital gap and really making sure that the accessibility for all and the value-based transformation is of course maintained. So Leon, if you don't mind, let's of course go to you, and of course there is.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll continue with Romina in the next round. So Leon, there are of course also intense reform processes, digitalization, simplification reforms processes underway in Kosovo. So can you maybe reflect for us on your approach to digitization in the government and the economy, and as well as some of the key policy initiatives that focus on linking the e-government strategy with the public administration reform strategy, the administrative burden reduction, and the whole process of re-engineering actually the public administration services. So indeed, they are in this human-centric approach and center around the life events of services. So what is your approach on the rather intensive reform process that you are overseeing and steering at this current moment? Please, back to you.
Hello, everyone, from me as well. Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Maya, for inviting me to this event. It's a real pleasure to be part of the event and part of this panel. So referring to your question, I would like to emphasize that like with many other people which spoke today, for our government, digitalization is also one of the key priorities. So as we are defining our new national development strategy and its key pillars, including economic development and human development, security and rule of law and good governance, everywhere digitalization is seen as a key driver. So that's why we are in the process of defining our digital agenda, which is a horizontal agenda which will cover all the aspects of governance, so inside the government, but also in our economy. We, as it was mentioned before from previous speakers, that digital transformation gives maximal results if it's applied both in the government itself and in the economy, and the maximum benefits in the increased productivity in economy can be achieved that way. So in that regards, it's not only the government we are looking at, but we're looking at the economy level. But when we discuss about digitalization in government in particular, I would say that our approach is both a policy one, but also an agile one. So in terms of policy, yes, there is a strategic framework we're working on. I mentioned the digital agenda. The e-government strategy is another important milestone, that important document, sorry, that will help us drive us through the digitalization process in the government. But at the end of the day, the aim is to increase transparency and accountability in the government, and of course improve service delivery for citizens and businesses. And of course those goals cannot be achieved simply by talking about digitalization without talking the transformation process behind. So it was also mentioned earlier in the discussions that we have to go through improvement and simplification of processes. And that's why we are really connecting these efforts on the policy level in the e-government strategy with our public administration reform and administrative burden reduction. So the aim is to really work on re-engineering the processes and changing the mindset. It was also mentioned before, digital transformation has little to do with technology per se, and a lot to do with the people, with the silos which have been created over the years. So with the transformation, we are trying to have a coordinated approach and work together with all the actors and make sure that these silos are broken and all the services and processes are re-engineered around the life events of our citizens. Because at the end of the day, we are here to serve our citizens, and we need to make sure that the services we provide are really fit their needs. So this is, I would say, the approach in terms of policy. In terms of legislation, we are also working hard to make the legislative framework for digitalization. Last year, we moved forward with our new law on electronic identification and electronic services, which provides an important, I would say, foundation for implementing electronic identification. We are also working on the new law on cybersecurity, which was also mentioned a bit earlier. As we tend to become more digital, we also become more exposed, and we have to address the risks which are associated with it. And a lot of effort is being put in having a coordinated approach towards cybersecurity, both in terms of strategy, but also in terms of having the legal framework and also institutional framework for driving digitalization. I would say summarize my part regarding our policy interventions, I would touch upon the important aspect of, I would say, human factor, because it is really a key aspect, which is also a key challenge, I would say. So we are looking at the ways of attracting and retaining talent inside the public sector, which of course is quite difficult. As we all know, ICT professionals are in high demand and in short supply. And it's very, very difficult to get them inside the public sector to contribute to the digital transformation process. But still, we are taking concrete measures. Low on salaries of public servants is one of those instruments, but it's not the only one. We are aware that we need to take additional measures to make sure that we are able to attract talent to the public sector. And lastly, I would mention beyond the ICT professionals themselves, it is very important to tackle the digital skills. So as we are having ambitious plans on digitalization in the public administration, health sector, education, it is very important that teachers, doctors, and our citizens have the necessary skills to utilize such technologies. So I would say that there are a lot of challenges. We are trying to tackle them with a policy approach on one hand, but on the other hand, we have an agile approach, which I believe I can discuss a bit later about some concrete measures we are taking in terms of driving digitalization forward.
Thank you so much, first of all, for giving us the update in terms of legal policy framework and this multi-track agile approach that you're currently undertaking. Thanks also for flagging the risk element. And Nick, I think that this has been a recurring theme this morning. So this is also something for us to also consider in our next support actions. Thanks also for echoing this changing the mindset imperative that we've been also discussing a lot about this morning, and for the new spotlight on the people and the human capital as the asset that we are having, and then the importance of building the attractiveness of the public and civil servants. So very, very important new elements brought into our discussions today. So Nermin, we'll be continuing now with you, because you're also in a very intense process around the accreditation of the e-signature as a very important enabler. So can you maybe reflect on the status? What will this mean in terms of next activities and concrete benefits for the citizens? And of course, we have followed that your agency has been preparing already in the past some services for the citizens, which of course need to be further enriched with services that fall under the responsibility of other institutions as well. And here I'm bringing some of Jose's insights from this morning. Really, the stigma reports confirm the ample room for improvement in terms of services for citizens and citizen satisfaction. So if you can make your intervention in this perspective. So Nermin, please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Hello to everyone from my side. I'm very glad to be part of this very important event. To say something about our current status is that luckily within 10 or 15 days ago, we finished our procedure and we become a certified authority for issuing a digital signature in Bosnia and Herzegovina on EID card. Unfortunately, this process was very lengthy in our case because we prepared our law even in 2013 on EID, which enabled us to proceed with other procedures, but unfortunately, due to lack of certified authority who would accredit us, we needed to wait for a certain period of time. But due to help of our EU friends, EU Commission, and other partners, we luckily finished our process of accreditation. And with partners from other institutions, as you all know, that in Bosnia and Herzegovina, maybe you are aware of that, we have many administrative levels, which all needs to be included in this process. And with our partners from Ministries of Interiors, hopefully we will start to issue a EID card within a month or two. and that hopefully will enable citizens, and because I think that was one of the key enablers in our case, and in order to have certain e-services already prepared from our side, but also I think it will enable banks and other companies which already waited for this kind of step. So I hope that in a very soon, in a very short period of time, we will have certain services for the citizens. And we, from our side, we developed a few services in order to reduce citizens' time and costs, in order not to wait for the change and not to go to the offices for several times, to reduce that, to go only for once, and to do some services online to finish that business. So in that process, we will need also help of other institutions. And I'm fully agree with other previous speakers, which said that it's very important to have middle management and other public servants very well educated in this manner in topic. And because we think, and I think personally, that it is very important for institutions to have this kind of changed mindset of for their servants, because they are leaders and they are enabling these processes for citizens and for business to be a certain thing. So that is in short.
Thanks so much, Nermin. Thanks so actually for carrying the torch of what was today. It was dubbed a bit of unsexy work. So really the enabling side of the work, and really looking forward to the launch of the services, while also understanding the extra complexity that you are faced with, stemming from of course the BH system. So thank you very much for this very active work. So as we are really a bit running out of time with this panel, so I would kindly ask that in this second round we are even shorter if possible. And Romina, I will start with you very briefly. Of course, we see that the Albanian government really seems to have clearly defined its position on innovation and technology in the long run. And since 2021, this digital revolution has almost become sort of a leitmotif of the main actions of the government, of course, an approach that has been embraced by the general public as well. So we would be really curious to hear from you very briefly on the upcoming vision of the government to further advance e-government, and if there are any concrete really examples, illustrations that you can share with us and share with the audience with regards to this vision of advancing e-government. So back to you.
Thank you, Maya, for the question. So our next goal is, of course, to respond to new challenges and also to better respond to the citizens and businesses' needs. We have actually finalized the 2022-2026 digital agenda of Albania, which will be approved in the upcoming weeks. And it will be the main instrument to guide our efforts in the upcoming years in terms of ICT projects, increasing the quality of life for citizens, increasing foreign investments, business opportunities, and also creating better chances for the next generation. The strategy aims to set goals for the coming years by following modern data platforms and digital technologies to respond properly to the needs of citizens, to further advance the digitalization of government services, and also to overcome the lack of human resources in ICT, which, as mentioned also by the previous speakers, is a challenge nowadays, and also something that the governments also should invest on. And the digital agenda will trace our path and stimulate our investments in key areas of advanced computing and data handling, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and advanced digital skills. Of course, digital skills is one of the main pillars of our new agenda, and in terms of concrete projects, during the past few months, we have been working on changing the ICT curricula to include coding skills and critical thinking since the first grade. And also at the same time, we are trying to use different government instruments to stimulate the registration of young people to ICT courses such as programming, AI, machine learning, cybersecurity, etc. The action plan of the digital agenda includes concrete projects related to the improvement of ICT infrastructure and systems in the government institutions, the inclusion of digital technologies such as AI, big data analysis, and automation, in order to increase forecasting accuracy by public institutions, and also to improve the e-services that are already provided to citizens and businesses. Soon we will implement the hybrid cloud in the government data center, which will provide quality services to citizens and businesses, thanks to automation of various infrastructure components in a single and intelligent ecosystem, and also through modern development technologies, methodologies, like DevOps, and also the establishment of a high performance center in the upcoming years. The adequate infrastructure for artificial intelligence shall be in place in order to help us provide better services to government, citizens, and businesses as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Romina. Thanks for walking us a bit and giving heads up to us in terms of the concrete projects and instruments that are mainly stemming from the new digital agenda. So just good luck on what I'm sure will be a demanding but yet rewarding journey. So thank you very much for sharing this. I'm sure it's an inspiration also for our participants as well. So Lulen, if we can maybe continue in the same direction. So if you can illustrate for us the concrete work that you're doing on launching the Kosovo portal and the interoperability framework. And we know it really had a massive role in terms of the COVID vaccines administrating. You have also really introduced recently these electronic payments for government services. So there is also some very, very promising work on your end as well. So if you can just for the audience, walk us through some of the concrete projects and steps that you have in the pipeline very briefly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maya. So yes, we are working concretely, I would say, on some key pillars of implementing e-government in Kosovo. And e-Kosovo is for sure one of those key elements. It has to do with, of course, it is our country portal for exposing services to our citizens and businesses. The project of introducing the new portal had started in the beginning of 2020, so it coincided with the start of the pandemic. And then when the time came for, I would say, administering the vaccines, it was the natural place to consider to start delivering an urgent service for appointments, applications and appointments for vaccines. So I would say in that unfortunate circumstance, we managed to do quite well. Actually, the portal was used to administer appointments for about 1.5 million cases. And at the end of the day, we ended up having 650,000 registered users in the portal, which created quite a good momentum. On top of that, as a side effect of the pandemic, also there was economic hardship which was caused. So the government adopted the economic recovery package, which included a lot of measures which had to do with benefits for citizens. And all of those, I would say, benefits and measures were implemented through services in Kosovo. So we managed within a short period of time to really have a lot of registered users in the portal. And that created a great momentum to continue with integrating many services. Some of them were already available in different platforms, but the idea is to centralize all of our services within within the single window of services, which is EcoSOA. So we continued late last year with introducing electronic payment for government services, so that citizens directly from the portal can pay for government services. We piloted it for traffic fines and for property taxes, but the idea is to quickly continue with other services as well. In the meantime, we are looking at some services which have, I would say, high impact on citizens. We have prepared electronic versions of civil registry certificates like birth certificate, marriage certificate, family certificate, etc. And the idea is to launch them very soon. We already have prepared the legislative background, so they are accepted as fully equivalent to those, I would say, old-fashioned certificates which citizens used to get at the counters or at the kiosks in the municipalities. So we are also moving ahead with some services which also have high impact, like renewal of vehicle registration. It's quite a complex process from the perspective of our systems and I would say the readiness of our interoperability systems. But again, here comes I would say, the agile and iterative approach. So we are not aiming perfect digitalized processes all the time. Sometimes we have to launch some services which I would say digitalize processes to the large extent, and maybe in the next iteration to look at bringing it to the next level. But electronic payments has really opened doors for digitalization of many services. And another important initiative which we are in the start of the process right now is implementation of electronic identification. I already mentioned that we passed the law, and with EU funding, we are about to start the project of implementing electronic identification, which of course will be used both for government services, but also is quite welcomed and expected by the private sector, banks, telecom operators, etc., etc. Because many of the services which today are semi-digitalized and can be partially finished electronically would be digitalized end-to-end with the implementation of electronic signatures. So a lot of things, I would say, are going on. Some of the services are more easily can be more easily digitalized. Some of the services are more complex, are very much related to deficiencies in the interoperability of our systems, systemic issues maybe with the end systems. I will mention a project that we are working on, which addresses a systemic problem of linking the address registry with the civil registry. It has been an accumulated problem over the years, and we are resolving the issue, I would say, now fundamentally. But all of these things, you know, take time and also take a lot of, I would say, coordination. And that's why we're trying to have this coordinated approach, coordinated by the Office of the Prime Minister, to break those silos and barriers, sometimes objective, sometimes subjective barriers, in order to drive forward the digitalization process.
Thank you.
So yeah, I know that we have short time, so
yes,
I will stop here. Thank you.
So thank you so much. Really, this merits lengthy discussions, but in the interest of time, Nermin, very briefly, just a comment from your side. Given the role of your agency, maybe it merits that you very briefly just reflect on the cooperation that the institutions in BIH have and the exchange of data by ways of web services that your agency enables, so that really the citizens can ultimately benefit, be it shorter procedures, etc., when exercising their rights. So very briefly, and Nick, then I'm wrapping up the panel so we can continue with closing. Please, Nermin.
Thank you. So we started the process in 2003 with electronic or digitalized civil registers. And that process was speed up in 2008 and 2009 in the process of visa liberalization system. So in order to accomplish that ID, chain, you know, to be verified and everything. So we enabled all citizens which have documents now in Bosnia and Herzegovina to have certain civil register digitalized. So that enabled us to exchange those data with institutions through web services. So a lot of hundreds of institutions in Bosnia and Herzegovina are already connected to our network and are exchanging the data from that. Of course, all the institutions which have a legal background, a legal base for that approach, but we also exchange the data with the registry fine, because all the institutions in Bosnia and Herzegovina which are entitled to issue a fine need to put those data in our registers. So we also exchange those data, and driver vehicle registration data and driver licenses data are also within our scope. So we have a whole data for the whole country as for the other registers. And we are happy to say that we are in a communication with the Kingdom of Spain, for example, to exchange those data electronically with regard to driver licenses from our citizens and Spanish citizens which came to Bosnia. So hopefully it's a pilot project, but that is one of the EU countries. And since we are now in negotiation with Albania, with regard to the same, we are going to be happy to exchange those data electronically with one of the C country, Balkan countries as well. So I think it would be a very good pilot project for other countries to continue on that.
Great, thanks so much, Nermin. Thanks for also flagging this potential for a pilot. So in respect of time, I would kindly wrap up, really thanking you all for both outlining status, what are the current updates, but also walking us through some of the practical illustrations. So really the panel reflected on the significance and potential of digital enablers, and as well as all the ongoing processes towards e-government and service delivery. But I must stress here, Nick, in function of the primary policy objective. So this is the takeaway from today, an inclusive digital transformation. So also another takeaway is that all this must be done against the backdrop of minding the digital gap and of course making sure no one is left behind. So ending up that of course we in RESPA will be honored that we continue supporting you on all these important reform agendas. Back to you, Nick, and thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Maya, for so skillfully managing this this challenge in moderating such a rich panel, as we can see from all the three countries, that there is so much interesting work going on, has been done, on the table, in the pipeline. So I think this is really encouraging to see. So and that's also probably a good moment to apologize from our side for the time issue, because we knew that it was challenging from the beginning to put such a rich panel together in such a limited time. But nevertheless, I think we altogether managed in still a more than reasonable way. So thanks so much to all the colleagues in this panel, colleagues Romina from Albania, also Lulion from Kosovo, Nermin from Bosnia and Herzegovina. Really super thanks for the great insights. Maya, thank you once more for the excellent moderation. And for sure, our paths will cross many times in the future to tackling this endeavor together. Let me just conclude from my side before I finally hand over to Gregor for the final conclusions. With thanking all speakers, all moderators, also our colleagues in supporting Maggie and Susie. Really, thanks a lot for bringing this all together. I know that Gregor will also thank them, but just in order not to forget, I think we cannot thank them enough for their support. I would just like to mention two things, and it comes back to, I think, the element of the risk that was stressed and also highlighted by Maya, and the link to security. Just to let you know that we are organizing a webinar end of May, the 31st to be precise, on digital ID and trust services, including this element of security for sure. So you will receive an updated invitation to attend this webinar. Secondly, with the colleagues of the RCC and also RESPA included, but also many others, European Commission, Kosovo is holding the next digital summit for the Western Balkan region in September, where we are working together with the Kosovo government and with institutional partners included to set up, to design a specific session within the summit really related and dedicated to cybersecurity as really a core issue. So this is concretely where we'll be working on these aspects, but many others to come for sure. But this is some concrete aspects that you can expect from our side. With this, thank you once more, but happy to hand over to Gregor for the final words. Please, Gregor.
Thanks, Nick. Yes, very short final words. I would also like to thank you to all the panelists, to the great moderators, to all the attendees who stayed with us. There's still close to 70 people online. Thanks to the Sigma team, Nick, Jose, Maggie, Susie. I don't know about you, but my impression is that it was a great webinar. It was a great exchange, not only at a high abstract level. There was really a lot of concrete, useful stuff, exchange of good practices, of some lessons learned, and so on. So I think it was really worthwhile. And it also confirms that we did the right thing to, as Sigma, to make this effort to, well, become a player in the area of digital government. So we are not anymore just the old traditional Sigma, focusing on civil service, on organization of public administration, and so on. But we took on all the challenges of public administration reforms which our beneficiaries face, and digital is definitely one of them. And it's very cross-cutting, as has been said many times today. It's not only about the services. It really cuts across all areas, and of course there are a lot of horizontal and basic issues. Some call them enablers. Some call them platforms, some call them unsexy work. So there's so much spade work to be done before you can really show something useful and attractive. So we will continue with this. We will continue to step up our work in digital, also in the service delivery area, which is in a way a new area of our work. Established, or at least advanced, enhanced recently, will go on. It will be reflected in our new framework of the principles of public administration. What we heard today will also is also an inspiration for our work on the principles, which we will try to capture all the aspects of digital in the digital principle and sub-principle and the indicators, which of course means that we will also include it in our monitoring work, which of course also means that we will include it in our data portal, and that our comparative advantage will be, as in the past, a wealth of data and evidence, also in this field of digital. But it's not only the principles and monitoring. We will continue supporting countries on bilateral basis. We will continue working on regional studies. We will continue working on webinars. You heard the next one is on digital ID, and I think from today's webinar, at least for me, I have so many questions, and I'm sure you do too. So there are many topics. There's much stuff for the future webinars. Digital ID, once only principle, how you make it happen, how you make it work, but also from other areas, HRM information systems, IT systems to support government processes of government decision making, of policy making, and so on and so forth. So it's a never-ending story. So no fears, Nick and Jose, you will never be bored in Sigma in this area. Yeah, the last announcement I wanted to make is, you remember I said that this is a webinar which was created with this idea of cross-cutting view on public administration reform, and it's only the first in the series of 3 such webinars. The next one is 24th, 25th of May. Together with RESPA, we are organizing a webinar on administrative simplification, which is again a very cross-cutting thing. It pertains to the services area, to the area of administrative procedures, but also to the area of policy making, regulatory impact assessment, and so on. Very cross-cutting. And the next cross-cutting one in June on managerial accountability, which is again a mixture of a bit of civil service, a bit of organization of public administration management, but also public financial management, and so on and so forth. So a lot of interesting events ahead. But for today, I would just once again like to say thank you very much. Thank you for bearing with us. I hope you enjoyed, and have a good afternoon, and see you very soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.